Imagine a world where silence isn't emptiness, but clarity, where solitude isn't loneliness, but protection. Imagine being so finely attuned to the chaos of the world that even casual conversation feels like a weight on the mind. Why is it that so many intelligent people, brilliant thinkers, inventors, artists, philosophers, choose to be alone? Why does social life not bring joy but disruption? And most importantly, what truth was Schopenhauer trying to reveal when he said solitude isn't just a preference, but a necessity for a certain kind of mind? In today's video, we'll explore this radical idea that for many intelligent individuals, social life isn't merely inconvenient, it's unbearable. We'll step into the mind of Arthur Schopenhauer and uncover how his piercing insights help us understand the deep connection between intelligence, solitude, and inner freedom. By the end, you'll encounter one of the most powerful realizations of all, one that could transform the way you see your own need for quiet, space, and depth. But before we begin, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who values thought over noise, and leave a comment below. Do you feel more alive alone or surrounded by others? Your answer might tell you more than you realize. And trust me, the final part of this video holds a truth so rare, so quietly devastating, that very few ever truly grasp it. Let's begin. Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century German philosopher, was known not only for his uncompromising pessimism, but for his razor-sharp understanding of consciousness, desire, and the human condition. To him, intelligence wasn't just about IQ or memory. It was about perception, a heightened, often painful awareness of reality. The more aware a person becomes, the more they see what others overlook or ignore. They see the hollow rhythm of small talk, the ego beneath the handshake, the unconscious cruelty woven into social rituals. And this awareness, though a gift, becomes a burden. Schopenhauer once wrote, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." Pause for a moment. Consider what he's really saying. The deeper you think, the more questions arise. And the more questions you ask, the less you can tolerate shallow answers or meaningless interactions. For the highly intelligent, daily social exchanges, chit-chat, gossip, polite rituals, aren't just dull. They feel like a drain, not out of arrogance, but because they hunger for truth, for depth, for authenticity. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you were in a group and felt truly seen, truly heard? If you're someone with a deep mind, you know the strange sensation of standing among people, yet being miles away, drifting in thought, detached from the noise. Schopenhauer believed that for minds like these, solitude isn't isolation, it's restoration. He wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom." This isn't pride, it's protection. Protection of the inner world, where ideas breathe, where truth can emerge. To Schopenhauer, and to many thinkers who followed, the mind is a delicate instrument. It sings in silence, but drowns in noise. Intelligent individuals often experience the world with greater sensitivity, not just emotionally, but intellectually. They sense contradictions. They detect insincerity. They notice manipulation, and it wears them down. The social world, with its performances, its masks, its endless demands, becomes a stage they never auditioned for. Even in gatherings, such people retreat inward. They may smile, they may nod, but inside they're observing patterns, predicting reactions, or simply waiting for the moment they can return to silence. This isn't hatred of people. It's a mismatch between the depth they carry and the shallowness they're asked to perform. And this leads to a crucial truth. Society as it exists often rewards the loud, not the wise. It values conformity, not originality. Distraction, not contemplation. Social life in its ordinary form was never built for the deep thinker. It demands energy without depth, presence without sincerity, performance without purpose. Schopenhauer knew this. He knew that being around people means absorbing their emotions, their expectations, their noise. For an intelligent mind, this is like carrying invisible weights, belonging to someone else. The solitude they seek isn't escape, It's return to themselves. And he wasn't alone in this. Carl Jung, the great psychologist, observed that the more introspective a person is, the more they withdraw from what he called the collective noise. To Jung, as to Schopenhauer, the inner life holds more truth than any outer performance ever could. Let me ask you something. How many times have you said yes to a social event only to regret it halfway through? Not because the people were unkind, not because they meant you harm, but because your mind was already somewhere else, craving quiet, a book, music, a thought left unfinished. That's not weakness. That's awareness. Schopenhauer warned that constant socializing dilutes the self. He believed that too much company pulls us away from who we truly are, filling our heads with the noise of others' thoughts, opinions, desires, until we forget our own. To live authentically, he said, one must cultivate what he called voluntary solitude, not loneliness forced by rejection, but solitude chosen. Chosen for its richness, for its silence, for its truth. And yet, in a world that equates being social with being healthy, this idea may sound radical. But is it? Modern research continues to confirm what Schopenhauer intuited centuries ago. Studies in psychology show that highly intelligent individuals often report lower life satisfaction when pressured to conform to average social expectations. They don't thrive on constant connection. They thrive on selective depth. So when people say you're too quiet, that you're always alone, or that you should get out more, perhaps the real question is, what kind of connection are they offering? And more importantly, does it nourish you or does it drain you? In the next section, we'll go even deeper. We'll see how this longing for solitude is not a flaw, but a signal, a sign of a mind finely tuned, too sensitive for noise, too deep for surface. We'll explore the kinds of environments intelligent people naturally seek, and the startling truth Schopenhauer reveals about the danger of shallow relationships. And remember, the final insight, the one that will shift how you see intelligence, isolation, and the soul itself, has not yet come. When Schopenhauer praised solitude, he wasn't just speaking as a reclusive philosopher who preferred silence to company. He was pointing to a pattern, one that repeats across centuries, cultures, and disciplines. The greatest minds in history, Socrates, Leonardo da Vinci, Newton, Nikola Tesla, were not social butterflies. They were by nature and necessity seekers of silence. But why? Because solitude offers something rare. Space, not just physical space, but mental space. In that stillness, thoughts can stretch, ideas can unfold, consciousness can deepen. The intelligent mind does not fear emptiness. It welcomes it. For them, silence is not a void. It is a canvas. Schopenhauer observed that most people are driven by what he called the will to live, a blind, ceaseless force pushing towards survival, pleasure, distraction, and reproduction. And much of social life, he argued, revolves around feeding this instinct without ever questioning it. But the truly intelligent person does not live unconsciously. They analyze, they reflect. They often rebel against the patterns everyone else follows without thought. They are not content with merely existing. They want to know why they exist and how to live in a way that aligns with deeper truths. This kind of questioning, this hunger for meaning, is not welcome in casual conversation. In fact, it's often dismissed, which is why intelligent people grow weary of talks that circle trends, gossip, and surface-level chatter. These exchanges aren't wrong. They're simply insufficient. Have you ever felt mentally hungrier after a conversation than before it began? That ache, that quiet emptiness, is the mind of a thinker starving for depth. Schopenhauer knew this hunger cannot be fed in crowded rooms. It must be satisfied in other ways, through books, long walks, music, reflection, and often through solitude. He believed that a mind constantly drowned in social noise loses its capacity for philosophical depth, its clarity, its fire. And here, modern psychology meets philosophy. Research from institutions like Yale and the London School of Economics has shown that individuals with higher intelligence often desire less social interaction, not because they dislike people, but because their inner world is so rich that most external exchanges feel lightweight. Their imagination, their curiosity, their inner dialogue These provide more stimulation than small talk ever could. Carl Jung once noted that the introverted intuitive type, a personality that overlaps strongly with high intelligence, does not seek quantity in relationships. They seek quality. They would rather spend 2 hours in deep conversation with one person than 2 hours mingling with 20. And when they don't find that depth, they withdraw, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. This is crucial to understand. Intelligent solitude is not about rejecting others. It's about aligning with oneself. The environments that support this alignment are slow, quiet, reflective. Libraries, nature, creative studios, a room with no one but your thoughts. These are the sacred spaces of the intelligent mind. Here, the mind is free to wander, to question, to make connections that would never survive the noise of ordinary social life. And yet, society often pathologizes this preference. We are told that extroversion is healthy, that sociability equals success, that being alone is strange. But is it? Or is it simply misunderstood? Schopenhauer turned the whole idea on its head. He believed that the more a person needs external stimulation to feel content, the emptier their inner world is likely to be. He wrote, "Ordinary people merely think how they shall spend their time. A man of talent tries to use it." In other words, intelligent individuals do not fear boredom. They transcend it. They are not searching for entertainment. They are searching for meaning. And meaning is not handed to you in a party. It is not found in a loud room. It is discovered alone, often painfully, but always profoundly. This does not mean intelligent people have no relationships. Quite the opposite. But their relationships tend to be fewer, deeper, more intense. They don't bond over shared noise. They bond over shared depth. They seek people who challenge them, who question the world, who are not afraid of silence. And this is where the danger begins. Schopenhauer warned, mediocrity loves company. The average seeks the average. And for the intelligent person, blending into social groups, out of obligation, out of habit, out of fear of standing apart, can become toxic. Not because the group is evil, but because it pulls them away from their deeper path. Have you ever caught yourself dumbing down your words just to fit in? Hiding your real thoughts because you knew they'd be misunderstood? Or worse, mocked? That tension, that quiet war between belonging and being true, is exactly what Schopenhauer described. To preserve their inner richness, the intelligent person must be willing to walk alone. And that walk, though it may be lonely, leads to a clarity no crowd can offer. Friedrich Nietzsche, deeply influenced by Schopenhauer, expanded on this idea. He believed that only through solitude can a person become who they truly are. He wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. That struggle is real, because society, for all its benefits, pressures us to conform, to belong, to mirror others. But intelligent individuals often feel that belonging comes at a cost, the cost of authenticity. They would rather be misunderstood than insincere. They would rather be alone than diluted. Does that mean they never feel lonely? Of course they do. But even in loneliness, they find something honest, an opening for self-inquiry, for creation, for truth. And sometimes that honesty is more nourishing than any empty company. So the question becomes, is your solitude a sign of sadness or sovereignty? When you choose to be alone, not because you were rejected, but because you are aligning, you are practicing a form of philosophical integrity. You are saying, I value my mind, I value my peace, I value depth over distraction, and perhaps, like Schopenhauer, you've come to realize that true companionship is rare. And until it's found, your own company is not just enough, it is sacred. In the next section, we'll explore the paradox of the intelligent mind, that while it often avoids social life, it also carries a deep yearning, not for crowds, but for connection of a very specific kind. We'll see how this longing shapes creativity, emotional intelligence, and even spiritual insight. And of course, the final part of this video will deliver the most profound realization of all. One that ties everything together in a way that may forever change how you see solitude, intelligence, and your own inner journey. What if I told you that solitude for the intelligent mind is not only a refuge from noise, but also a vessel for a rare kind of connection? This is the paradox Schopenhauer helps us confront. Intelligent people may avoid superficial social life, yet they often possess a deeper capacity for connection than most. But the connection they seek is not casual, it is sacred. Behind the silence, behind the distance, there exists a longing. Not for popularity, but for understanding. Not for company, but for kindred spirits. They may go days without speaking to anyone, yet carry an inner ache, a quiet yearning to be seen, not for their words, but for their essence. This kind of connection is incredibly rare. That's why intelligent people are often alone. Not because they dislike people, but because shallow company only deepens their isolation. In fact, studies in psychology and neurology have shown that intelligent individuals process relationships differently. They are more sensitive to emotional nuance, more attuned to inconsistencies in behavior, more deeply affected by inauthenticity. What feels like a harmless conversation to most can leave them feeling drained, even betrayed, if they sense a lack of depth or sincerity. That's why they gravitate toward the few who speak the same emotional and intellectual language. Carl Jung described this as the meeting of two souls. He said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." For intelligent individuals, this is the goal. Not interaction, not small talk, not networking, transformation. So, how does this affect their emotional life? Many people assume that introversion or a life of solitude means emotional detachment, but often the opposite is true. Intelligent people don't feel less, they feel more, but they channel those feelings inward through thought, through creativity, through long, quiet nights of introspection. That's why so many of the greatest artists, writers, and philosophers lived in near isolation. Think of Emily Dickinson, who wrote over 1,000 poems, yet rarely left her room. Not because she feared the world, but because her inner world was too vast, too alive to be contained by small talk. Or Franz Kafka, whose internal landscape was so deep, so haunting, it spilled into literature that still echoes today. These were not people running from life. They were engaging with it, at a depth too intense for casual conversation. And this brings us to an essential truth. For intelligent individuals, solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the refinement of it. In solitude, they form deep relationships, not with people, but with ideas, with art, with memory, with visions of what could be. They may sit alone for hours, silent, still, but in their mind they are in dialogue, with Schopenhauer, with Jung, with the universe itself. And sometimes these internal conversations are more profound than anything a crowded dinner table could ever offer. This also explains their heightened creativity. Solitude is not the enemy of inspiration, it is its crucible. It creates space for original thought. Thought that hasn't been filtered by group opinion, by social approval, by the need to fit in. In isolation, the intelligent mind enters a flow state where boundaries dissolve, where imagination stretches beyond limits, and new perspectives emerge like stars in the dark. Albert Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." He wasn't romanticizing, he was stating a fact. Studies have shown that solitude enhances both divergent thinking, the ability to explore many possibilities, and convergent thinking, the ability to focus and refine those ideas into truth. Creativity thrives not in noise, but in silence. But solitude is not without its dangers. Left unchecked, it can become a prison, not a sanctuary. Because intelligent individuals live so deeply within their minds, they can spiral into overthinking, melancholy, even alienation. This is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. True self-awareness isn't just knowing your thoughts. It's understanding your emotions, your needs, your limits. Schopenhauer himself struggled with this balance. Though he champions solitude, his writings reveal a man haunted by bitterness, by loneliness, by a deep sense of existential despair. That's the shadow side of high intelligence. It sees too clearly the flaws in the world, the illusions of society, the randomness of fate. And without emotional grounding, that clarity can become unbearable. But when paired with wisdom, when intelligence is tempered by self-compassion, by presence, by acceptance, it becomes something extraordinary. Not just a tool for understanding the world, but for transcending it. So what kind of connection do intelligent individuals truly seek? Not entertainment, not distraction. They seek resonance. They want conversations where masks fall away, where both people are willing to be honest, curious, vulnerable. They want silence that feels comfortable, not awkward. They want relationships that respect their inner space, not demand it. They don't need constant interaction. They need meaningful interaction. And when they find it, in a friendship, a partnership, or even a piece of music that names the unnameable, they come alive. That connection nourishes them more than 100 superficial ones ever could. That's why many intelligent people say they feel most connected, not at parties, not in crowds, but while reading a book that speaks their unspoken thoughts, or walking in nature and feeling the universe whisper without sound, or creating something, a poem, a melody, a theory, that finally gives form to what's been buried inside them for years. This isn't a rejection of people, it's a different way of relating, but it's also a harder path, because the world is not built for depth. It's built for speed, for distraction, for surface. And intelligent individuals often find themselves swimming against the current, choosing reflection over reaction, meaning over popularity, solitude over noise. And yet, in doing so, they discover something most never will, a profound inner freedom. Because once you stop seeking validation from crowds, you become your own mirror. Once you stop fearing silence, you begin to hear your true voice. Once you stop needing constant interaction, you start choosing intentional connection. And this, perhaps, is what Schopenhauer meant when he spoke of solitude not as exile, but as liberation. In the final part of this video, we will uncover the most powerful truth of all, the secret reason why intelligent people don't just prefer solitude, they need it to fulfill their purpose. A revelation so profound it reframes loneliness not as a void, but as the birthplace of greatness. Now, we arrive at the truth Schopenhauer hinted at, but never fully named. A truth that echoes not only through his work, but through the lives of the greatest minds in history. It is this: the solitude of the intelligent is not just a preference. It is the crucible of their purpose. Because deep intelligence does not exist simply to analyze the world. It exists to transform it. And true, lasting transformation, the kind that shifts paradigms, that rewrites history, cannot come from noise. It comes from stillness, from introspection, from the courage to face the inner world with unflinching clarity. And in that confrontation, something emerges, not just knowledge, but wisdom. This is what Schopenhauer was truly pointing to. To be intelligent is not just to think more, it is to feel deeper, to see sharper, to carry the weight of consciousness, a burden most escaped through distraction. And it is in solitude that this burden is not avoided, but purified into insight. It is in the quiet hours, when no one is watching, when there are no roles to play, when the mask finally drops, that the intelligent mind meets its rawest truth. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. The chatter fades, the false identities dissolve, and what remains is essence. This essence, this quiet, unshakable core, is what the world truly needs. But here lies the paradox. The world demands this essence, yet rarely understands it. Society praises intelligence when it produces results, technology, innovation, wealth. But it often fears intelligence when it questions norms, exposes illusions, or speaks truths too uncomfortable to hear. That's why the intelligent are so often forced to walk alone, not because they reject the world, but because they are not here to reinforce its illusions. They are here to pierce them. And that piercing clarity, that revolutionary vision, requires solitude. It requires space to think without manipulation, to feel without interruption, to imagine without ridicule. It is in that sacred space, that silent laboratory of the soul, that new ideas are born. Ideas that shake foundations, break cycles, reveal paths no one saw before. Let us not forget, Most of the people who changed the course of history were solitary by nature. Jesus went into the desert. Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Newton discovered the laws of motion in isolation during the plague. Kafka wrote his visions in the hush of night. Beethoven, deaf and alone, composed his greatest symphonies in total silence. They were alone, but they were not empty. They were becoming, and that is the final truth. For the intelligent person, solitude is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of creation, a laboratory for ideas, a temple for truth, a sanctuary where the soul finally speaks in its real voice. Schopenhauer once said, "It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else." And this is the most powerful revelation of all. That solitude is not loneliness. It is alignment. That social withdrawal is not weakness. It is refinement. That distance from the world is not exile. It is the place from which a new world can be envisioned. But this journey is not easy. It takes courage to say no to invitations that don't align with your soul. It takes strength to sit in silence when the world demands you entertain yourself. It takes faith to believe that your inner life is not a prison, but a portal. And above all, it takes wisdom to realize you are not broken for needing solitude. You are simply awake. Awake to the beauty that only silence reveals, to the truth that only solitude can unlock, to the calling that only depth can answer. So the next time you feel the pull of quiet, when you withdraw from noise, when you choose thought over talk, don't apologize. Honor it. Because in a world that constantly pulls you outward, your decision to turn inward may be the most revolutionary act of all. And now I ask you, what does solitude mean to you? Have you had moments in stillness, in silence, in aloneness, when your deepest insights emerged? When your most creative breakthroughs arrived? When your truest self stepped forward, not in a crowd, but in a single quiet breath? Share it in the comments. Your story might resonate with someone who needed to hear exactly what you have to say. If this video moved you, subscribe to the channel. Like it. Share it with someone walking their own silent path. Someone who may need the reminder that they are not alone in their solitude, but joined by centuries of brilliance who walked quietly, deeply, and intentionally through this world. Because in the end, it is often the quietest minds that shape the loudest legacies. And the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more clarity, more courage, more people willing to walk alone, so that others may one day find their way. Thank you for watching. Thank you for looking. And above all, thank you for listening to the silence within you.